I'm Barbara Alexander, and I'm going to talk to you this morning about the false core belief and the false core pattern. I'm doing that in preparation for a 5-day challenge that we're offering next week that will give you 5 days of practices in 30 minutes that you can do in 30 minutes that will help you to dismantle your false core pattern. The false core pattern and the belief that it comes from are central to the unique self-emergence process because we believe that until you can loosen the grip of that persona or false pattern that you have been living with, you aren't able to fully drop into true self. So it is the beginning of our process, and it is important to the whole process. So next week, as we offer to you all of the practices in our first module, the separate self module, we're not saying, and in a week, you'll be completely free. But what we are saying is, this is a process that we have found works really well. And so we're offering it to you, and you will use it over a long period of time. Because whenever we find ourselves contracting into the false core pattern, or the false core belief and the false core pattern that comes out of it, this process can help us to relax and let go and open into spaciousness. So let me just say a couple of key points about the false core belief. So where did this come from? So we follow the work of Stephen Lewinski, who is a deep spiritual practitioner and also a clinical psychologist, who was interested, of course, in the interrelationship between spirituality and psychology, and wanted to sort out what was underneath what we typically in psychology do, which is to look at the childhood of an individual, consider the experiences that shape them, and then look at what are the beliefs and assumptions. So what are the conclusions that they drew based on their experiences that they had? And what Walensky said is, it's deeper than that. And it speaks to the beginning. So imagine that you are in a place of great spaciousness. For those of you who regularly experience this state, if you can just imagine yourself into it. For those of you that don't so much, one of the ways that I imagine it is to just feel a bubble around me that's expanding and expanding and expanding from side to side and back to back, from above my head and below my feet, just to give a sense of being in a place of more unboundedness. And then when you come back to the sound of my voice, you recognize that, oh, you're a physical being and you can get up and walk away and go on with life. But then imagine that you come from that place of unboundedness and you find yourself in a tiny human that can't literally do anything for itself. And that's what's called the first shock of separation. It feels like being abandoned, right? And it doesn't make sense. It's mitigated somewhat by the fact that it takes the infant until at least 5 months, generally somewhere between 6 and 12 months, when they continue to feel like they are one with their caregivers and the world around them. But at that 6 to 12 month spot, they recognize, whoa, there's a me and there's a lot of not me. And that's what's called the second shock of separation. And still pre-verbal, of course, the idea is that the child draws a conclusion, makes an attempt, even though it's not in clearly articulated words, but has a sense that is erroneous about how they find themselves in this situation. And those conclusions run along the lines of, I'm not safe, I'm alone, I'm not enough, I'm too much, I'm worthless, I'm not interesting. There's many iterations of that conclusion. And the idea then is that because this is the fundamental belief that all the experiences that one has going forward goes through that original belief. So you can imagine it like a lens through which all your experiences go, the lens through which you make sense out of what's happening to you. Now, the thing is that we have no way to research this since it was pre-verbal. The only way is anecdotal. And Walensky believes from his own long career of working with people, and I absolutely echo it in my almost as long career, that individuals will very often say, there's just something I can't get at, or I don't understand why I feel the way that I feel and act the way I act, because my childhood was fine. And I've explored it and I've looked at it and I know that it was a good enough childhood, right? And so we firmly believe that this is actually a phenomenon that happens, and that if you can sort out and get to the bottom and find that belief, that you can then see the way that you have developed as an individual with that underlying belief. And we call that the false core pattern. And that is a pattern that comprises how you think about yourself, how you feel, your body sensations, and oftentimes how your body has found a way to sort of hold itself, as well as your behavior. And that persona, or false self pattern, will either hide or deny or compensate or verify this underlying belief. Now, for some people, that's completely revelatory. They have never gotten to the bottom of it. And it's been heartening for me to see that happen, particularly around people who have done lots of personal growth work. So we know that there is something to this. But even if it's not revelatory for you, it will give you a sense of, oh, that explains a lot. It's always been there. I've kind of known it, but I haven't known what to do with it. And in many cases, it hasn't made sense. So in our process, what we do is first help you to ascertain that fundamental belief. We help you to see how in your life, with that lens, you have developed into not actually the whole person that you could be, but I often describe it as being in a box with a set of ways that you consider yourself to be that isn't the wholeness, because it comes from that fundamentally false belief. And then there are practices that will help you to loosen its grip. And with that comes a deeper capacity to drop into, really to reclaim that which you never lost, but it felt like you lost, which is the timeless eternal. So I hope that gives you enough of an overview of what we mean when we talk about the false core belief and the false self pattern and why we think it's so important. And encourage you to join us next week for a 30-minute, 5-day-a-week, learn to dismantle your false core or your false self pattern, or really discover your false core belief and dismantle your false core pattern. We're excited to offer you the practices that we've developed. We know that it's a workable process because, as I say, we've used it with many people and we use it ourselves. And we will be very eager to hear your feedback. So until next Monday, the 5th of March, I leave you and I hope you have a lovely week. Bye.